Madam Court Reporter, could you please swear in the witness, the deponent?
Would you raise your right hand, please? Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Could you state your name for the record?
Casey Dixon.
And how do you spell that?
CASEY-DICKSON.
Is that your full name?
My middle name is Prescott.
Okay. And who do you work for?
The Hardy County Chamber of Commerce.
How long have you been employed there?
Almost 7 years now.
Do you do any work for the IDA?
Yes, sir. I do.
And what work is that?
I work as an part-time hourly employee on an as-needed basis.
So you have 2 jobs?
Not 2 full-time jobs, no, sir. I'm the full-time director of the Chamber of Commerce, and as I said, an hourly part-time employee.
So you have a full-time job and a part-time job?
On an hourly as-needed basis. Mm-hmm. I don't have set hours with the Economic Development Council.
Okay. How did you obtain your job with the Hardy County Chamber of Commerce?
I heard that there was a position opening and interviewed for that position and was offered the job.
Do you know if that position was advertised in a newspaper?
I don't recall.
And who did you hear from that there was a job opening there?
I don't recall.
And when did you begin to work for the IDA?
I assumed the project management of the Continuum project in November of 2012.
And you were the project manager of the Continuum project for the IDA?
Yes, sir.
And how did you find out about that job?
Through Mr. Lambert, Bill Lambert.
And how did he tell you about the job?
He told me in a conversation, he explained to me what the job was going to be for the management of that project, and because of a perceived conflict of interest with another of his staff members, he asked me if I would help with the project management of Continuum.
And do you know if that position was advertised?
I do not.
Do you know if anyone else was interviewed?
I do not.
To your knowledge, were you the only person interviewed?
I don't. I'm not sure.
Do you remember seeing any newspaper ad personally for this job?
No, sir.
Did you hear about this job from anyone else besides Mr. Lambert?
No, sir.
Are you currently the grant administrator and project manager for the Continuum Labs project?
No, sir.
Who is now?
Mr. Lambert has reassumed that role.
And when did that happen?
At the end of the funding cycle in December, their last draw request, so in January, Mr. Lambert assumed that role.
Of what year?
2014.
Is there any paperwork or documents that show that you are no longer the administrator and Mr. Lambert is the administrator?
Not to my knowledge.
Was that ever presented to the IDA board?
Not to my knowledge.
Are you currently a project manager for the Continuum Labs grant?
As I said, no, not since December of 2013.
So is a project manager the same thing as a grant administrator?
I'm not sure. I don't, it depends on the...
Ralph.
Hold on, we can take a break for a second off the record. Okay, you had told me that you were a grant administrator for the Continuum Labs grant for a certain period of time.
No, sir, I was the project manager.
Okay. And you ceased doing that in December of 2013, and Mr. Lambert took over in January of 2014?
Yes, sir.
Is there such a job as a grant administrator?
I'm in our office. I'm not sure officially. I'm not sure of the.
Were you
titles.
ever a grant administrator?
No, sir.
Okay. When did you take the job as project manager for the Continuum Labs grant administration?
in November of 2012.
And why did you take that position?
I was asked if I would be interested in taking that position because of a perceived conflict of interest with one of the other staff members of the Economic Development Council.
Okay, that's why they asked you. Why did you decide to take the job?
I just decided to help out with the project and help manage the project.
And were you offered a hourly rate or a wage?
I supplied my own wage for what that would be.
And what was that amount?
$30 an hour.
And were you paid $30 an hour to work as project manager of the Continuum Labs grant oversight?
Yes, sir.
Approximately how many hours do you spend doing that?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Do you have any other jobs at the IDA besides that?
No, sir.
Are you currently working for the IDA?
No, sir.
Were you fired?
No, sir.
Did you resign?
No, sir.
How is it that you're no longer working there?
The project that I was hired to work on has been taken over by Mr. Lambert again.
So you were released?
Yes.
Were you released in writing?
No, sir.
Did you ever have a written contract with the IDA?
No, sir.
Did the IDA board ever approve your employment?
They were notified that I would be doing the project management at the November board meeting of 2012.
And did you bring all the records with you today that we asked for in the notice of deposition?
Yes, sir.
And are all those documents in front of you?
Yes, sir.
Okay. We could pass those over here. I'm going to show you a document that was from the records that you brought. Can you tell me what that is?
Sure. That is the public records request made by yourself or Mr. Coleman in regards to public records for LifeSync Technologies.
And were you working at the IDA at that time?
I was.
Okay.
I asked for, I had never seen those public records requests. I asked for a copy of those on Tuesday from Christy, our public.
I'm sorry, I'm much.
Sorry. I asked for a copy of those documents on Tuesday from our public records staff person, Christy Sherling, on Tuesday.
Tuesday of what year?
2000. This Tuesday,
This
April,
week?
yes.
So you've never seen these documents prior to this
sir.
week? They were never given to you by any person at the IDA?
No, sir, because they related to LifeSync Technologies, and I was not the project manager of the LifeSync.
Okay. The staple was with a paper clip, correct? You handed these to me with a
They
clip.
were just separate.
There's two separate public records
Yes.
requests. Could you tell me the date of that one?
December 7th, 2012.
Okay, and the first time you were shown that is Tuesday?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and if we could mark that as Exhibit 1.
Okay.
And could you describe what this second document is?
Again, a public records request made by yourself to the Hardy County IDA for public records related to LifeSync Technologies.
And what was the date of that?
November 27th,
Of what year?
2012. I'm sorry.
And were you working at the IDA at that time?
I believe so. I have the exact date and the folder. However, I was asked to be the project manager for the continuing project. I didn't have any management over the LifeSync project.
Okay. Do you see two bullet points in the request, the public
Yes,
records
sir.
request of November 27th?
Yes, sir.
Can I mark this Exhibit number 2? And the second bullet point request, is that, what company is that asking for?
It's for the assignment modification agreement between the Hardy County IDA and Continuum Labs.
Okay, and is that with regard to Continuum Labs or LifeSync?
It's regarded the takeover of Continuum Labs from LifeSync.
Okay, and you were a project manager for the review of Continuum Labs grant?
I mean, through the duration of the project, yes.
Okay. So this public records request is not limited to LifeSync. It actually includes Continuum Labs, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Do you have any problems with your memory? You have a okay memory?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you're not on any drugs or alcohol
No, sir.
during this deposition, correct?
Yes, sir.
And in your opinion, does Mr. Lambert have a sufficient memory?
Yes, sir.
You don't have any memory problems?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. How long have you known Mr. Lambert?
The majority of my life.
Okay. I forgot to ask you, where did you attend high school?
Hardy Senior High School
And where is that located?
in Hardy County.
Is that also in Wauchula, or
Yes, sir.
did you pursue any education after high school?
Yes, sir.
And where was that?
I attended South Florida State College. It was community college at that time for 1 year, and then continued on to Florida State University.
And did you obtain a degree from Florida State University?
No, sir, I did not.
What years did you attend Florida State University?
2000 to 2002, I believe.
And what was your field of study?
Child growth and development.
And why did you discontinue your education at FSU?
It was not working for me, and I decided that that's not the major that I wanted to pursue.
And where did you go to work after FSU?
After I came back home to Hardy County, took a job at the YMCA as their membership director. After that, I continued on and accepted a position with Congresswoman Catherine Harris as a constituent services representative, and was promoted to her constituent services director. After she was out of office, I stayed on with the congressman who took her place, Congressman Vern Buchanan, as his constituent services director.
And when did, from there, did you go to the Chamber of Commerce?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And when was that you went to the Chamber of Commerce again? You might have already told me.
In July of 2007.
Okay. And where is the Chamber of Commerce office located?
107 East Main Street, Wauchula.
And where is the IDA office located?
107 East Main Street, Wauchula.
Are they in the same building?
Yes, sir.
Are they in the same room?
We share an office, yes, sir.
Okay. And what are your hours at the Chamber and IDA?
8 to 4:30.
And I shouldn't have asked that together. Let me break that up. What are your hours at the Chamber?
8 to 4:30. But I'm a salaried employee, so I do work events, weekends, night meetings occasionally.
And what are your hours at the IDA?
I don't have regularly set hours with the IDA.
And what hours do you typically work at the IDA?
I haven't worked any since January of this year.
Oh, I'm sorry. When you did work at the IDA,
Mhm.
did you have any particular typical hours? Would you work on the Continuum Labs review at nighttime or during the day?
It depended on the need of the situation. It was sporadic each month. The timing was sporadic each month. I had invoiced them my time with calendar details of when that time was
Okay.
taking place.
And do you have any familial relationship with Mr. Lambert? Are you related to him in any way?
I think we have distant family connections, yes, sir.
And how distant it would be distant?
I think approximately back to 6th, 7th, 8th cousin distant.
Okay. Do you have any other interaction with Mr. Lambert other than at the IDA?
We have a friendly relationship outside of work.
Do you have any other LLCs, partnership, corporations,
No.
business ventures?
No, sir.
Do you have any corporations, LLCs, business ventures that are your own, other, not concerned with Mr. Lambert, but just your own, or anything else you're involved in?
No, sir.
Do you keep a calendar of the time you spend during the day?
If there's a specific meeting, I keep track of those meetings. Not necessarily what I just am doing during my daily work.
And do you typically take notes at meetings you attend?
Depends on the nature of the meeting.
How would you record the time that you spent by the hour for the IDA?
Through a calendar
And where is that calendar?
on my office computer.
Is it like a Google Calendar?
Outlook.
And how would you submit your time for payment?
I would provide them with an invoice with the total amount of hours broken down into what exactly I was working on at that time, supplied with the calendar dates of admissions of what to back up the invoice.
And would you use a particular program like Quicken or QuickBooks, or would you just type it on a sheet of paper in Word? How did you actually physically?
I calculated the invoices myself.
And then typed them up on like a letter?
An invoice, yes, sir.
Okay. Using like Word?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you consider yourself an organized person?
Yes, sir.
And do you keep your files in a neat order or disorganized?
Neat order.
And do you use a filing system for paper files?
Yes, sir.
Like a manila, I know it sounds kind of stupid question, people do things different ways. Like a manila folder with like
Yes, sir.
folders like this?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you have any experience with technology or software?
No, sir. Other than just basic knowledge of working a computer.
And does that basic knowledge extend to Excel,
Yes, sir.
PowerPoint,
Yes, sir.
Word?
Yes, sir.
Do you write any programs?
No, sir.
Have you ever managed a computer or technology project?
No, sir.
Have you ever used the LiveSync or CareSync product?
Yes, sir.
And have you signed up for that?
Yes, sir.
And did you sign up personally or through your work?
Personally.
Okay, can you explain to me how it works, what it does?
It's a medical application software that collates all of your medical documents from the different doctors and specialists that you may visit into one specific application that you can pull yourself.
Do you input the data or do you have the doctor input the data?
You can do it either way.
And how did you decide to do it?
I haven't supplied and I haven't put any of my medical information in yet, in my medical records in.
And when did you sign up for the CareSync or LiveSync?
I don't remember.
Was it this year?
No, sir. It was probably in 2013.
Okay, and you still haven't put any medical records in?
I don't really have a lot of medical records at this time in my life.
Okay, did you request your doctors to put your files in?
No, sir, I haven't.
Do you know how many customers are using CareSync or
No,
LiveSync?
sir, I don't.
Are you aware of a call center for CareSync?
In the Tech River building, their employees that they currently have are located in that facility. I don't know that it's technically a call center per se. It depends on how you define call center.
How many employees are employed there at Tech River and the CareSync?
The last I understood there was 13.
And how do you know that to be the case?
Because that was something that it would have to be reported to me through the draw request.
Ralph, just for the record, I'm going to object. This whole line of questioning is just not relevant to, even likely to lead to discoverable evidence on the issues that we're talking about in Exhibits 1 and 2.
Okay.
I mean, you can keep answering.
Did you bring the draw request you just mentioned with you?
Yes, sir, I did.
Can you find it in there?
All of the draw requests were the same in the same format. This is the last one and goes back to the first one. And on each draw request that they had, they would list the number of employees that they had working.
And what was the date of this draw request?
December 31st, 2013.
And is that a true and accurate copy of that withdrawal request?
Ralph, I'm going to make a standing objection, just so I don't have to say this every time.
That's fine.
Same basis as the prior motion, that your second portion of your request was dated December 7th, and that this record would have post-dated the date of your request and would not have been responsive. And so my objection is that that document was not even created or in the possession of anyone at the time you made the request.
Okay. Could you tell me again the date of my first records request and exhibit number 2?
November 27th, 2012.
And could you tell me the date of this draw request that you pulled?
December 31st, 2013.
Okay. Can you tell me the date of the purchase order, which is above that date or somewhere near
was
below it?
Purchase order for the IDA agreement of November 20th, 2012.
What's the difference between a purchase order and a draw request?
The draw request was what was submitted for the monthly reimbursement for the actual draw of the month. I believe if you look that the purchase order is the same date on everyone, because that was when the agreement was signed between the IDA and Continuum.
Did you bring a copy of the purchase order?
I don't know what purchase order you're referring to. I believe that that is the date that the contract was signed between Continuum and the IDA.
So the purchase order shown here in this agreement is actually just the IDA agreement with Continuum?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have any draw requests that would have been dated in November of 2012?
These two are dated from October. These two are dated October of 2012.
Okay, thank you. There's 2 here, so I'm going to ask you to identify these separately. Could you tell me what the first one is?
Sorry, give me just a second. This one is the first one that you said?
Yes.
Okay. I have to look at this one to make sense. These are technically the same, but they're dated differently.
Could you explain how they're dated differently?
Yes, sir. I believe that the one that's dated October 31st of 2012 was the original one that was submitted. However, the actual date of the draw was for December 3rd, 2012. We have written on both of these that it was paid on December 5th of 2012. They're for the exact same amount.
So why are there 2?
I believe that this was the original date of the draw request. The draw request that was made. However, these invoices are for November. It was a reimbursable grant, and then this was the follow-up invoice for December 3rd, which is what we actually paid on December 5th. They're for the exact same amount.
Okay. Okay. If I can mark these separately, the one that's the color one, we'll mark this 3, so we keep track. And if we can mark the other one as 4. Okay, thanks. Okay. Can you tell me when you first saw exhibit number 3?
I mean, I can't off the top of my head. No, sir.
Okay. Was 3 created while you were working for the IDA?
I can't remember exactly when I first saw this, so I didn't take over project management until November of 2012.
In November of 2012?
I can give you that specific date if you
Oh, okay.
would like that.
Oh, you can?
I can.
Okay, let's take some time to get that.
These are the minutes from the IDA meeting when the board was notified of that. They're dated November 13th, 2012.
So that was your first day that the IDA approved you?
Yes.
Is that the first day you started working?
I can't remember exactly.
Do you know if you worked before the IDA board approved you or only after?
Only after.
Okay. And what was the date on exhibit number 3?
October 31st of 2012.
And is that the purchase order or the creation of the document date? What is that?
That is the date of the draw request.
Okay, and when was it paid?
December 5th of 2012.
Okay, so you were working as the project manager for this Continuum grant before the check was paid on December 5th, 2012?
Yes, sir.
And would you have reviewed this as part of your business duties for the IDA before
Yes,
the
sir.
check was paid?
Yes.
Okay. And do you remember reviewing this one?
Not specifically. No,
Okay.
sir.
But it is something that you would have looked at and
Yes, sir.
reviewed? And would you have also looked at the other pages that are part of Exhibit 3 that back up the invoices?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and how about Exhibit 4?
This one's dated October 30th for 2012.
And when was the check paid on that?
October 10th of 2012.
Okay, so would that have been before your time?
Yes, sir.
And would you personally know whether Mr. Lambert reviewed that particular request?
I would not know, sir.
Okay. Do you know whether there were any gaps in time between the time Mr. Lambert stopped reviewing requests and you began to review requests?
I don't know that for certainty.
Were there any documents that may have slipped through the cracks that weren't reviewed by anyone?
I don't believe so. No,
Okay.
sir.
Whose handwriting is on? I don't know how we got this one. Was this attached to something? This one doesn't have an exhibit. I must have grabbed that by mistake.
These were attached together because, as I said, they're for
Okay.
the same amount, the same date.
The Exhibit 4 has a notation in handwriting. It says paid K. What are those
That would
two
be
letters?
Christy Sherling, KS. Christy
Okay.
Sherling.
And who's Christy Sherling?
She is the office manager for the Economic Development Office.
Okay. And on the top of the page, it's got some written notations and looks like something scribbled out. Do you know what that was?
No, sir, I don't. I apologize.
And Exhibit number 3, what is the handwritten notation there?
Check number 1010, 12/5/2012.
Okay, so that's the same check number that's shown on Exhibit 4.
Yes, sir.
And there's some initials on Exhibit number 4. Whose initials are those?
I believe those are Mr. Lambert's.
Okay. And are you familiar with his signature or initials?
Yes, sir.
And does that look to be his?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So would it be fair to say that he reviewed Exhibit number 4 if he signed and initialed it?
I don't know that it would be fair to say because I can't give you a specific. I don't know what Mr. Lambert did or did not do. I can tell you that after all the information was presented, it was handed to Mr. Lambert as well as the board when they reviewed the monthly draw request at each board meeting.
Okay. And did you initial documents when you reviewed them as part of your procedures?
I don't believe so. No, sir.
Did you review any September checks?
Of what year?
Oh, I'm sorry, 2012.
No, sir. I never reviewed any checks, bank statements. I was not the project manager in September of 2012. As I
Okay.
said, I didn't assume that role until November of 2012.
If Mr. Lambert said in his deposition that you became an administrator or project manager in September of 2012, could you explain that discrepancy?
He must have been mistaken.
Okay. I'm going to ask you to look at some checks
Okay.
that were produced to me in Discovery. It's on page C49 of the production. Could you tell me what those checks are?
No, sir, I could not.
And have you ever seen those checks before?
No, sir, I have not.
And do you know if anyone at the IDA ever reviewed those checks?
I don't know that. No, sir.
Did you ever review checks as part of your project management for
No.
Continuum Labs? Were you aware that Mr. Lambert reviewed checks as part of his project management review of LifeSync?
Yes, sir.
Did you ever review the LifeSync checks?
No, sir.
Is Continuing Labs operating out of the tech center that you referred to, the Tech River Center?
Are they operating?
Where is Continuum Labs?
They have an office in Tech River as well as an office in Wesley Chapel.
Okay. And the employees that you said there were 13 at Tech River,
At the last time I understood.
and they work for Continuum Labs?
Yes, sir.
And do they have any employees in Wesley Chapel?
As I believe so, yes, sir.
And do you know how many employees are in Wesley Chapel?
No, sir, I do not.
Did you attend the presentations by Mr. Grant and Mr. Bond to the IDA board in September of 2011?
I believe so.
And what was your function in attending that meeting?
I've always attended the EDC meetings as the director of the Chamber of Commerce.
What is your understanding of what the LifeSync proposal involved?
My understanding is that they were wanting to create a product called Blue Water, which was a medical records application for storing their medical records, for storing one's medical records.
And was the product ready to go or still to be developed?
When they applied,
Yes.
I don't know.
Okay. And do you know whether let me withdraw that question. Did you assist in any way obtaining investors for LifeSync?
No, sir.
Okay. Have you discussed LifeSync with Mr. Joe Albritton?
I don't know. I don't remember.
Have you ever discussed LifeSync with Representative Ben Albritton?
I don't know. I don't remember.
As project manager for the Continuum Labs, did you have any concerns about cybersecurity, the security of medical records, or the backup of data?
That was not my job. My job was to receive the draw requests each month, review the draw requests, and then present them to the IDA board.
So the only aspect of the project, per se, that you managed was the monies that were going from the IDA to Continuum Labs.
The draw requests as they came in, yes.
And how would you know whether to approve a draw request or not?
The IDA board approved the grant in its totality of $3 million. They did not want the monthly draws to have to go for a vote of approval each month. So therefore the draws were presented to the board each month but were not asked to be approved.
Ralph, I'm going to just renew for the record my objection on this line of questioning. We're kind of going in and out, and we're doing stuff that is relevant, and then we come back out. I'm just don't want to waive.
I understand. I'll honor your continuing objection. I guess my question is, as project manager, you got a draw and you had to decide whether to recommend approval of the request. Is that what you did?
No, sir. I presented the information to the board for their review. As I said,
Okay.
They-
Did you ever review the draw request against what was in the agreement? I mean, did you compare it to something? To see if the request for expenditure was an allowed expenditure under the agreement?
the contract that was made was laid out with the specific line items that are listed on the invoice each month. That the board had agreed that they wanted to see those expenses each month.
So would you check the invoices to make sure they matched up with one of these line items?
Yes, sir.
And did you ever, when you were doing this, did you pull out the agreement itself, or did you rely on these line items?
We originally decided on that format that it was because of the contract and the way that it was written. Those were listed as specific line items that the board would like to see each month.
When you say we, who exactly decided that?
Myself, the IDA, Continuum Labs, Mr. Bond,
And who created this draw request form?
Mr. Bond.
And did you have input or say into the words that were shown in the descriptions?
No, sir. As I said, those were what was listed in the contract between the IDA and Continuum Labs.
And do these descriptions match exactly the agreement with Continuum Labs and IDA? Are the words the same?
I mean, I can't get into specific, I can't guarantee you that the specific wording is the same.
Did you ever compare these descriptions to the agreement to see if the wording was the same or different?
I'm sure I did at some point in time in the beginning, but I don't know.
And you haven't done that lately?
I have not. I have not.
When Mr. Lambert had a conflict before he took over this review again in January of 2014, were you the sole person at IDA that was reviewing the draw requests and invoices?
I would review them, and then, as I said, they were presented to the board each month, and
Okay.
they
But is there
reviewed
any
them.
other staff that reviewed them, or were you the sole staff person that reviewed them?
I was the sole staff person that reviewed them. I would pass them off to Christy Shirley, our office manager, for her to include in the board packets each month. So if she took it upon herself to look at them, I can't answer them.
Okay. And do you know whether Mr. Lambert also looked at them?
Mr. Lambert looked at them in the board meeting with the board packets, as well as I'm sure that there were times that he reviewed them additionally as well. Specifically, I can't say.
Were you shown any notes, documents, files, canceled checks about LifeSync when you took over the Continuum Labs project?
No, sir.
Did you ever go back into the files and look at any of the LifeSync records?
No, sir.
Did you ever look at the LifeSync contract or agreement?
I have seen that contract and agreement, yes.
And when did you look at that?
Probably at the beginning of the project management. I don't know specifically.
And when you looked at that agreement at the beginning of the project management, did you ever go look at any of the draw requests or invoices or canceled checks to see if it matched the agreement?
No, sir. I never saw any of the financials from LifeSync or Blue Water, any canceled checks, bank statements, any sort of financial information. I do have in here, I didn't know if it was relevant when I was searching through email, of in February of, I'll have to find it through. I did send Mr. Bond an email in February of 2013 requesting a closeout reconciliation for Blue Water, saying that Bill, Mr. Lambert, and the board are requesting those documents, and he sent the attachment. They were the profit and loss statements and balance sheets for Blue Water.
Okay, if we could mark that as exhibit
Sure.
number 5. With regard to this exhibit number 5, I noticed that your signature block is as executive director for the Hardy County Chamber of Commerce, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And the email that you used was the Hardy County Chamber of Commerce email?
Yes,
Did you have a separate email for your IDA work?
I did not.
Did you have a separate signature block for your IDA work?
I did not.
How would someone know that you are acting on behalf of the IDA and not the Chamber of Commerce in emails?
Not sure.
Why is there a Mosaic logo and a CF logo at the bottom of your signature block?
Because with the Chamber of Commerce, they are our community partners, and that's part of the agreement that we have with them.
Is that this Millennium Community Partners?
Yes.
And I've never heard of it personally. Could you explain to me what that is?
They are top members for the chamber. They supply monetary
Okay, so they're
membership
like
dues.
it's a top membership
Membership
level.
due, yes.
Millennium is like platinum or
Yes.
something. Okay. And do you know whether the IDA obtains their money from either of these two companies?
I know that the IDA has the Mosaic agreement where they receive funding from.
And is that where the money originally comes from that is then handed out through the IDA through these draw requests to Continuum Labs?
Yes.
Do you know Sarah Pelham?
Yes.
And do you know if she managed the LifeSync grant at any time?
I know that she was involved with it. To what extent, I'm not sure.
What is her position?
She is the Economic Development Coordinator.
Do you know whether there were any plans for Sarah Pelham's husband to work for LifeSync or any other company owned by Mr. Bond?
I don't know what you mean by plans. I do know that he did interview with them and eventually obtained a position, but I
Do
don't
you
know
know
what
what
you mean by
position?
plans.
Okay. What position was that?
I'm not sure specifically what his title was.
Where is Miss Pelham's office? Mrs. Pelham's office?
In the Economic Development Office, 107 East Main Street.
So within that same shared office, you have the Chamber of Commerce, the IDA, and the Economic Development Office?
We have the Economic Development Council, the Industrial Development Authority, the Chamber of Commerce, Main Street Wauchula, and the Community Redevelopment Agency.
And who pays the rent for the space?
The Economic Development Council.
And does the Chamber reimburse the EDC for the rent or space?
No, sir. We cover expenses such as insurance, copy, office supplies.
Continuing objection.
Do each of the entities have their separate phone numbers?
Yes.
They have separate phone company accounts?
Yes.
Do they have separate electrical accounts?
No.
And how did they decide what percentage of the electric should be paid?
The EDC is the one who pays the electric. It's not broken down.
And have you discussed the Continuum Labs draw request with Mr. Pelham?
Mr. Pelham?
Yes, Mr. Pelham. I'm sorry, what's his first name?
Brian?
Brian Pelham. Have you discussed anything to do with the Continuum Labs draw requests or agreements with Mr. Pelham?
I don't believe so.
Are you aware of prior public records requests filed by Mr. Coolman in June and July of 2012?
No, sir.
Were you present in the office in any capacity, maybe with the chamber, when the Auditor General reviewed the LifeSync records in 2012?
I was in the office, but I was not involved in any of those meetings, so I couldn't say specifically what they were discussing.
Okay. Who did work with the Attorney General on the LifeSync records request?
I don't know specifically.
I think you said you saw some meetings. Who was in the meeting rooms?
I don't know. I know that Mr. Lambert, Mrs. Pelham, Ms. Shearling were the ones who were involved when the Auditor General, I believe, not Attorney General, were in the office for the audit. They were the ones working with them.
Have you ever discussed the continuing labs or LifeSync with Representative Grant?
Just in any capacity?
Anything about them at all?
I mean, I have, yes, had discussions with Representative Grant.
And what was the substance of those discussions? What were they about?
Regarding the project, regarding Hardy County, I mean, I don't know specifics. I don't know.
Okay, so they're regarding the project and regarding Hardy County in general?
I don't know specific conversations that I've had with him. I can't answer that question.
Did you have just one conversation or two or multiple?
I've had multiple conversations with Representative Grant.
And when did you first begin discussing LifeSync or Continuum with Representative Grant? Was it before you were employed by the IDA?
I mean, I have met him prior to becoming the project manager, yes, and I'm sure had conversations with him. I cannot tell you what those conversations were about.
Okay. And who is Jennifer Lux?
She was an employee of LifeSync.
And do you know whether she's employed by Continuum?
I don't specifically know.
Do you have a list of all the Continuum employees?
I do not.
So how do you know that there's 13 employees, or how did you verify that there's 13 employees?
I did not. The IDA board had said repeatedly that our job was to manage the grant, not manage the company, and they did not think it was appropriate for respect to the privacy of the company to go into employee records and any other personal records pertaining to the privacy of the company. So I never got into those specifics.
In your job as project manager, did you manage the LifeSync or the Continuum contract and record keeping?
Did I manage the Continuum contract and record keeping?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Did you review the Auditor General report or preliminary findings with regard to contract record keeping for LifeSync?
I mean, I read the Auditor General report.
Do you know if there were any deficiencies identified in contract and record keeping?
I don't recall.
Did you take any actions to try to remedy any deficiencies that were identified by the Auditor General in IDA contract and record keeping?
I don't recall.
Did you travel to Tallahassee in January of 2012 to attend the Joint Legislative Audit Committee hearing about IDA records?
I did. In January of, with the Joint Legislative Auditing Committee?
Yes.
2013, yes.
And why did you attend that meeting?
I was project manager of Continuum Labs at that point in time, as well as the director of the Chamber of Commerce.
Did you speak at the Joint Legislative Audit Committee
I
hearing?
did not.
To your knowledge, are there any employees at Continuum Labs that are paid with monies that don't come from the IDA?
I don't know that.
Do you disagree with the Attorney General's report?
You keep saying Attorney General.
I'm sorry, Auditor General, my fault. Yeah.
Do I disagree with the
Findings?
report?
I'm sorry. Do you disagree with any of the specific findings in the Auditor General report?
I mean,
I'm going to continue to object. I just don't want to waive anything, Ralph.
I understand.
I hate to interrupt you, but I just don't want to waive.
Maybe objection to scope. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it is. I mean, I
Okay.
just don't see how that has any relevance
Right.
or even remotely going to lead to relevant evidence about the requests of November and December of 12.
You could still answer the question if you can.
okay. I mean, I don't remember the specifics of what was in the Auditor General findings for that report. I do remember disagreeing with the finding regarding economic development projects and the definition of what those were. But specifically, I can't give you an answer for that.
Okay. And did you manage the continuum contract?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know what the total amount of checks that the IDA has sent to LifeSync?
I do not.
Do you know the total amount of checks in dollars that the IDA has sent to Continuum Labs?
Continuum Labs was given $3 million in year 2. It was $3 million in year 2. Then they were given $600,000, and then they were given $993. The total grant for 3 years was $7.25 million, but that did include the first year of what LifeSync got, and I don't know off the top of my head what that total was. I believe it was 2.25 that LifeSync got, which would mean that Continuum received the remaining $5 million of that grant. But again, I can't give you exact figures.
Once you became project manager of Continuum, did you attend the IDA meetings?
Yes.
Did you make staff presentations to the IDA board?
Yes. Mr. Bond would make presentations regarding the status of the company. I would ask them if they had any questions regarding the draw request and answer any questions myself or Mr. Bond in regards to the draw request.
And when you were working for the chamber, did you attend the IDA meetings in 2012 before you took over?
I believe I've already answered that, but
Yes.
yes.
And were staff reports given on LifeSync contract management?
I don't remember. I don't know.
Did you change anything in the way you presented staff reports on the Continuum Labs contract management versus how staff reports were presented previously for LifeSync contract, including the frequency of reports?
I can't speak to previously with LifeSync because I was not involved, but I can say that in the Continuum Labs contract, there was a stipulation in there that monthly reports be given. So myself and Mr. Bond presented monthly at the board's direction through the contract.
Okay. Were you involved in the closeout of LifeSync in any way?
Other than the document that I showed you previously, that's. I mean, I was not involved with the closeout. No.
That's exhibit number 5?
Yes, that email was sent in February of 2013, I believe. The closeout took place in October of 2012, if I'm not mistaken. So, that was the first that and only documents that I've seen of that.
Did you ever discuss the closeout of LifeSync with Sarah Palom either before or after your employment with IDA?
I can't recall specifically.
Did you ever visit the Wesley Chapel location?
Yes, sir.
And why did you go there?
I went one time to look at the office, meet some staff members there, meet with the accountant. I met with Mr. Bond.
And who was the accountant?
I don't remember their names off the top of my head. It was a man and a woman. I don't know.
Do you know whether they were employees of Continuum or the separate accounting firm?
I don't. I'm not sure. Excuse me. They were from a separate accounting firm. as to what their employment arrangement was with Continuum Labs. I don't know the specifics.
Do you know where LifeSync was located physically?
Right. I believe that they were located in that office, but I don't know that for certain. I don't know.
Do you know whether the principles of LifeSync are the same as the principles of Continuum Labs?
I'm not sure who were the principals of LifeSync, so I can't answer that question.
Do you know whether there was a closeout of Life? Do you know whether there was an annual closeout for LifeSync each year?
There was only 1 year, and the document that I have, other than that, I was not involved at that time. I did not see any records. I don't know.
So just Exhibit 5.
Yes.
Okay. Do you personally have any knowledge of how the $2.5 million that was sent to LifeSync was spent specifically?
Specifically, no.
Have you ever reviewed the checks that Mr. Lambert reviewed for LifeSync?
No. I mean, and I'll continue to state repeatedly, I did not have anything to do with LifeSync. I did not review any of their documents, canceled checks. I didn't have anything to do with LifeSync.
Okay. Have you ever discussed LifeSync or Continuum Labs with Representative Brodeur?
I've met with Representative Brodeur before, yes. The specifics of that conversation, I couldn't tell you.
Do you know if it was about LifeSync or about Continuum Labs?
I don't recall.
Do you know what Representative Brodeur's job duties were for Continuum Labs?
I do not.
Or Representative Grant?
I do not.
Have you ever seen any invoices from Representative Grant for Continuum Labs draws?
Not from Representative Grant specifically. I don't recall seeing any.
Or from Representative Brodeur?
No, from Representative Brodeur, I don't recall.
Do you know whether they get paid a salary?
I believe so, yes.
And how much is that salary?
I don't know.
Would you have changed anything in the way that you manage the Continuum Labs contract? Is there anything in your management of the Continuum Labs contract that you are not comfortable with?
In management, I managed it to the specifics of the contract between Continuum and IDA at the board's discretion. So,
Okay.
I mean,
But you never actually pulled out the contract, you just look at the Continuum Labs
no, I
draw
was
that
very
they...
familiar with the contract. I was very familiar with the contract and what the contract stated, but you asked me if I personally would change any way that I was hired to do a specific job.
Okay, who taught you the job that you're supposed to do?
It was based on the contract. The contract laid out
So you
Between-
brainstormed yourself what the job should be that you did?
based on the specifics of the contract. It was decided between myself and Mr. Bond how we would present the information that the IDA requested in the contract each month. With Mr. Evers was involved with those discussions as well, and Mr. Lambert was involved with some of those discussions.
Okay. Did you present all invoices that were attached to Continuum Labs draws to the IDA board?
Yes.
And did that happen every month?
Yes.
And were all invoices presented? that came in?
Yes. Mhm.
Did you consider any of the invoices to be confidential?
Any of the to be no, sir. I don't believe that we did.
Okay.
The information that was submitted in the draw request was presented in its entirety to the
Including,
IDA board.
including the invoices?
Yes.
Okay. Did you have to get any permission from the Hardy County Chamber of Commerce to work for the IDA at the same time you were working for the chamber?
Yes.
And who gave that permission?
It was discussed through my board. I don't know that they officially voted on it, but through my executive committee and then my full board, they were fully aware of what I would be doing.
Do you believe you have any conflict of interest working for the Chamber and the IDA at the same time?
I do not.
And have you ever requested a legal opinion or Committee on Ethics opinion as to whether or not a conflict of interest exists?
We depend on the opinion of the attorney, Mr. Evers, for any IDA or EDC business, as well as the Chamber has an attorney as well. Both were consulted. Ethics Committee, no.
And do you have anything in writing from Attorney Evers that there is no conflict of interest?
I don't believe so. Not to my recollection.
Did you ever request in writing such a legal opinion?
No.
Did you ever request one orally?
I mean, we have discussions.
Continue to object scope.
I mean,
Did you do any evaluation of Continuum Labs from a business consultancy type perspective, or did you just simply manage the invoices and draws and checks?
I presented a 6-month review and a year-end review to the IDA board regarding, based on the contract, exactly where the company was with the meeting up to the deliverables of the contract.
And how would you look at milestones and deliverables? How did you know what those were?
The contract lays out specifically what those deliverables were, and then either through information that I had through draw requests or conversations with Mr. Bond, seeing if those matched up.
Did you do any independent verification that the deliverables were met other than the conversation with Mr. Bond?
Can you repeat that question? I'm not really sure.
I think it was Ronald Reagan said, "Trust but verify."
Mm-hmm.
I understand you had conversations with Mr. Bond about meeting the deliverables.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever independently verify that the deliverables were met?
If the
Other than looking at a draw request.
right, I would verify them again through draw requests, but verifying the number of employees, for instance, which was a deliverable. That was one of the things that the board was adamant about, that they did not want to get involved in viewing employee records and the business side and respecting the privacy of the company. So verification through, reviewing employee records or anything like that to make sure that the numbers that Mr. Bond was giving me compared to the deliverables. No, sir, I did not.
Okay. I think you said you received $30 an hour for the work you did managing the Continuum Labs contract.
Mm-hmm.
How often would you submit an invoice for your own payment?
Once a month.
And was there an average amount?
I believe it was roughly $400 a month.
Are you still working for the IDA, or now that Mr. Lambert's taken over, you no longer work for them?
I don't have any official responsibilities at this time, no.
Okay. How would you handle your taxes on the money that you received from the IDA?
I would say
Continue objection scope.
Let me rephrase the question. Did you submit a 1099 form to the IDA as an independent contractor?
no. I was hired as a part-time employee, so taxes were handled through their accounting software.
Okay.
Again, part-time employee on an as-needed hourly basis.
Are there other part-time employees at the IDA that you know of with a similar contract arrangement to yours?
Not to my knowledge.
And are the other employees full-time employees?
Yes, as far as I understand.
Is the Continuum Labs agreement with the IDA or the EDC?
With the Industrial Development Authority.
And was the LifeSync agreement with the IDA or the EDC?
I don't know specifically.
Okay. Do you have any relatives on the IDA board?
I do.
And who is that?
My father, Mike Prescott.
And do you know whether your father voted on hiring you to do the project management of the Continuum Labs contract for the IDA?
There was no vote on hiring me. There was a notification to the board. There was no vote.
Okay. And do you know whether he filled out any conflict of interest forms?
I don't know that.
And it's kind of a personal question, but do you live with your father in the same
do
house
not.
at this point?
I do not.
Okay, thanks.
Mhm.
Do you want to take a break?
Want a
Sure.
break?
Sure.
Okay.